Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Kathy Barnette Show. I have a stellar of a guest for you today, my good friend, General Michael Flynn. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hi, Kathy. How you doing? How's your family? Everybody doing good? Ready for the holidays?
We are. I'm so very grateful for you taking some time out and coming and just talking to me and to my audience. We appreciate it. But let me start off by reading your bio in case there's someone who's been living under a rock for the past several years. Let me just read this real quick. Put my glasses on. This is about General Michael Flynn with more than 33 years of service in the United States military and current chair of America's Future. General Michael Flynn's military career culminated as the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. We know it as the three-letter alphabet DIA, and as the nation's highest serving military intelligence officer. After retiring from the Army in 2014 and as a private citizen, General Flynn went on to serve in a variety of business, educational, nonprofit roles to include supporting veterans organizations around the country, and which is something that he continues to do today. His public service included selection and service as a foreign policy advisor to several Republican U.S. presidential candidates in 2016, and subsequent appointment and service as the National Security Advisor to the 45th President Donald Trump. That lasted for about 22 days, didn't it, sir?
Yep, sure did.
Yeah. General Flynn is a national best-selling author, holds 3 master's degrees, and is a recipient of numerous military intelligence and law enforcement awards. Married, I met your lovely wife, 2 sons who I thought one of them was a television produced a movie. I was watching a movie. I finished watching the movie and the name Michael Flynn came up and I was like, oh my goodness, was this your son? You said no. But nonetheless, sir, thank you so much. And I wanted to read that for a reason, because you spent 33 years in the military. You did so well. You achieved one of the highest positions in our country, the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. And that's where you ended your career in the DIA as the director. Let me just start off. What are some of the resume criteria for someone to hold to become the director of the Defense of Intelligence?
Wow. Well, you have had to demonstrate an ability to be able to lead large organizations. So, on that count, I have served and been in charge of everything from 40 people to up to and including, prior to going into DIA, up to and including a little over 6,000 people in one organization that I led. So I led large organizations over many, many years. So that's sort of number one. The second thing is responsibility for resources outside of just leading people. Resources meaning, understand and how to manage budgets, large budgets. And I have had budgets that range in the millions, tens of millions to tens of billions. And so you've got to understand the financial components of leading organizations and the resource constraints that you have, particularly in the government and in the military. I've also had really a blessed career, and frankly, it's the sacrifice that we have, because many that do not come home. But I've also served in about 5 years, for about 5 years of combat duty overseas in various places, from Central America, the Caribbean, to Africa, Central Asia, Southwest Asia. So I've served in combat operations in those places, and I have served on roughly 6 continents. So I have a breadth of experience.
Right.
With that gave me the the experiences that they were looking for in a job like running a large three-letter agency. In this case, one of the largest intel agencies in the world. So not just in the United States.
So tell me about the intel piece of it. It's the Defense Intelligence Agency. What is that? The intelligence, does that mean you're just really intelligent? You're really smart? You have a high IQ? What is that?
Yeah, so it's so the agency itself is almost 20,000 people, and it's in roughly 145 countries around the world. So these are people that are deployed in about almost 80% of the world, and they are based out of embassies primarily. In some cases, they are directly involved in combat operations or military operations around the world. The agency itself is responsible for all military, so Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, all military intelligence operations.
And when you say intelligence operations, what are you talking about?
Yeah, so what I'm talking about is everything from analysis and tactical intelligence operational support to infantry divisions or Marine Corps, organizations or naval forces, to counterintelligence operations, meaning like to counter the spying operations that occur against our country and particularly overseas. We do an awful lot of, the scale of logistics that we have in that organization is huge. So we provide logistics to many organizations around the world. So,
and you sat at the head of that organization, right?
I got picked for that job I was appointed by Barack Obama.
Oh, yeah. And so now the reason why I wanted to go through all of that, because I think it's fascinating when most of us only became aware of you once Donald Trump brought you in as the national security advisor. And only then did we become aware of you when you were one of the first people that, if for many of us who look at our government, the weaponization of it, you were the first
casualty.
Yes, that's the word I was looking for, the first casualty. Today we see them, I guess with you, it was a test run to see exactly how this would happen. And they have only perfected it over the years and by person. But I thought it was interesting as I thought about you coming on and talking to you. Now, I have talked to you for, I don't know, you and I probably met maybe about 2 years ago.
I think it's important for people to understand our relationship too, because I think that part of it was you running for...
Was it Senate or the House?
Well, you were running for the House. You were running for Congress, a member of the House of Representatives. And that's how I became familiar with you. And I think it's probably important. I think I've, told this story at different events that you and I have been at. But I think for your audience, I think it's really important to understand a little bit about you as well, that I came into awareness of who you were because you had run for Congress, right out of the gate, right? Never run, not for political office.
Exactly.
So you ran for Congress because I think you felt like a lot of us feel like the country's going in the wrong direction.
Right.
So you ran, and after that election, and that was the election of 2020, that something did not feel right. And so you on your own went out and did some personal canvassing. And this is now me coming into your life and learning about you. Somebody had said, "Hey, there's this gal up in which district
outside of Pennsylvania." Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was in Pennsylvania,
of Philadelphia. Mm-hmm.
It was like Manchester County, I think, if I remember right.
Montgomery County.
Montgomery. I'm sorry, Montgomery. So, there's this gal up there. She's like fighting back, and she's going out there. And what you discovered during that initial canvassing was that something wasn't right? That the numbers just didn't add up. So put that aside. The next thing that I then saw was another guy who I think America has gotten to know slightly, a guy by the name of I think it's Tim Frank. But Dr. Frank.
Yeah, Dr. Frank. Mm-hmm.
And he suddenly came in to do some analytics on that and discovered, some real big anomalies. So all that aside, because at a certain point in time, I think like a lot of people said, we got to continue to move forward. And then the moving forward for you was like, I'm not going to give up. And that's why I just have so much respect for you, because you've said, and here you are, and here we are today, still talking about it. You have not given up. And so you ran for United States Senate. And frankly, I think the mistake that was made in your case was that Donald Trump endorsed Oz, who was a total loser in that race, and he should have
literally he was a total loser.
He should have backed you. I mean, and you know that, and I think a lot of people realize that now. Anyway, that's sort of water under the bridge, but it's not. It doesn't mean that you're down and out.
Oh, absolutely not. Oh, absolutely not. Right. And so I'm going to get to that in a moment, because when I was looking at your career, thinking about how you did not know me very well, but you knew what you just explained there. And that was enough for you to say, or to see something in me, for you to come alongside me back in 2020, 2021. And then when I decided to come out, you were one of my first endorsements in that Senate race. But I was just thinking, you spent 33 years in the military. Our government, our taxpayer dollars had invested a tremendous amount of money in you and in your education and your advancement. We obviously, as a country, even Obama believed in you. You believed that you had demonstrated leadership. You demonstrated the ability to manage large resources, demonstrated the ability to keep secrets and to work in the interest of this nation. And now all of a sudden, Donald Trump, you move from this stellar career and path to Donald Trump bringing you into his administration as the national security advisor. And then within 21 days, your 33 years no longer seem to matter.
Right. And I get defined by that, and so a lot of, I get defined by that rather than the entirety of my life. Right. Which is,
isn't that something how they do it? Right. I mean, even when I ran in my race, I mean, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I worked really hard to be able to have the life that my husband and I have. Most people know I grew up very impoverished, but I didn't allow that to get me down. The first in my family to go and finish college, spent 10 years in the military, worked in the financial industry, corporate America, adjunct professor, author. Now I'm running for office after homeschooling my kids because I love my country. I want to, to do my part in aligning our country. And then all of a sudden I begin to interfere with the powers that be. I began to interfere with their narrative and with their plan. And for you, it was the left that came after you. For me, it was people we would consider MAGA or conservative, which proves my point as of late, as I tell people, we're not fighting against Democrats versus Republicans, red shirts versus blue shirts. Those labels are meant to distract. But what I saw for you, you spent 33 years, a stellar career. Obviously, the people who are in the know you, trust you, have invested a tremendous amount in you. Within 22 days, you no longer fit their narrative, and they come out guns blazing. The very country you would have laid your life down for and you had served was now coming against you. And just on a very small micro level of what you endured, I am now known for tweets I put out 10 years ago. Not even full tweets, not even full thoughts, just a little blurb of whatever a tweet could hold at that moment. And again, I was thinking about you, I was thinking about me, I was thinking about our country. And how did that happen? Like, 22 days, within 22 days, your 33 years no longer matter. Can you share with us a little bit of what you were thinking? And did you think this was going to blow over? Like what?
Yeah, no, I first of all, I would say that looking back, and I've told this story in different ways and different times, but I think looking back, sort of woulda, shoulda, coulda, said something different or done something different, held my ground differently. But I'm not designed that way. I'm sort of designed because of my military background and training. I'm designed, if your responsibility, you're responsible for your actions, whatever. I will tell you that, and your audience, number one, when I was in the White House, I was actually a registered Democrat. So when I was supporting other candidates, when Trump considered me to be one of the final four presidential candidates, I was a Democrat. I was a registered Democrat because I never looked at politics as white or black, right? As Republican or Democrat, as light or dark. I looked at them as this is America and what's best for America, and that's kind of what drives me. So the time frame that I was in the National Security Advisor position, because you're also in that position during the transition period, and so the Obama administration, and there was a real clear evidence on 5 January of 2017 where there was a meeting in the Oval Office specifically to determine how to get me out. So that was a meeting that was held by Obama. But they needed people in, I call it the Uniparty. And this is what you faced. Okay, the Uniparty. The Uniparty is an establishment body of politicians who are in it for themselves and for the expansion of their power base and for the increase in their own wealth. And those are members of the Uniparty, and they are up and down the scale when it comes to politics. Well, in Washington, D.C., it's vastly worse. And so inside of the White House, during the Trump administration, so Obama kind of set the stage with his group, and that's clear. There's very clear evidence about that. There's no doubt about what happened. But they had to have others inside that were on their team. And the people that were inside on their team were people like the Trump's chief of staff, right? Reince Priebus. Another person would be his sitting vice president, Mike Pence, because they had to have been part of this effort to say, you know what, we need to get this guy Flynn out. For your audience, the FBI, I was involved in the Crossfire Hurricane. In fact, my name on that investigation was Crossfire Razor. They did an extensive investigation on me and didn't even find an unpaid parking ticket because I'm like that. I mean, that's sort of my so how I am. You don't get to the level,
right,
particularly in the military, with any kind of blemishes. So and then everybody goes, well, he pled guilty and he needed a pardon, which was after all this piece of the conversation. But it was really, if you really understand why I did it, I did it to protect my family, which is I think it's something that I know you are in that category where you would say your family.
And with two questions. Why were you trying to protect your family? I think I had heard, I don't know if I read it or what, but that they were coming after your son.
Oh, they were going to destroy my family. I know we're not dealing with Democrats and Republicans anymore. For your audience, and you have I am certain you have a broad audience. This is not, I was raised as I was raised in a lower income family. My father was a sergeant in the Army. And I'm one of 9 brothers and sisters. When he retired from the Army, he went to become a teller. And at the time, my mother wasn't working. She finally got to work as a secretary. But we had 9 siblings at home, right? So we're not like some big, because I'm a general, I come from some, big to-do family. No, so, and we were Democrats at the time. We were kind of in the era of John F. Kennedy. My mother was she was a big, in our local and in our state level. My mother was like a member of the state Democrat Party, right? I mean, Democrats, right? So again, but we always thought about it in a much, much different way than we do now. And that's where I really want my message today to people is, why did they go after me so hard?
That's what I was about to ask. What narrative did you disrupt for them? Why was it within 22 days? Why are you the first domino to fall?
That goes back a couple of years. So me having been appointed as National Security Advisor was a threat to the military industrial security state complex, a big threat, because I am anti-war. Okay. I'm not against a fight that's a necessary fight to protect the security.
Because I'm about to say, you spent 33 years in the military. Surely you couldn't be against all wars.
Yeah. And 5 of those years in direct combat operations. I mean, direct combat operations where while I was there, people, were either, lobbing mortars at you, taking shots at you, or trying to kill you. So I think that I'm not anti, against somebody who takes a shot at us, but we have to be really smart about how we continued this crazy, endless wars that Washington, D.C. people get us involved in and don't seem to care about the costs, right? Because the costs are on us, are on the American people. So that's part of it. And that started when I was in the administration of Obama. Because again, I'm running one of the largest agencies in the world. I'm testifying to Congress. You're supposed to sit there in front of Congress and tell what you believe to be the truth, whether you like it or not, right? Deliver the truth kind of at all costs, especially in the world of intelligence. And you're sitting with other, and I was military at the time, so I'm in uniform, and you're sitting with other civilian appointees who are basically lying through their teeth to the American people. And I wasn't going to do that, and I didn't. And I was asked to step down. I was actually asked to step down.
From the what? From the
Obama administration.
From the defense, as director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. So you were asked to step down after what, 3 years, 2 years?
I was asked, I had served there 2 years, and it normally is a 3-year assignment, but I was asked to step down after I gave witness and testimony to Congress.
About what? What did you give witness to?
About the rise of ISIS and Al-Qaeda around the world at the time. Because if you remember, the big message from President Obama and the administration was, Bin Laden's dead, Al-Qaeda's on the run.
Yeah, all is well. Go back to sleep now, people.
That was a narrative that they wanted, and that was a political narrative, not an honest narrative. So when we went in front of Congress, I sat there and we had some backroom arguments about this too, but in front of Congress, they wanted me to basically toe the party line. And I said, that's just, I can't do that.
Because at that particular time, as the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, it is your job. I guess you would be the equivalent of a grassroots organization. It's your people on the ground gathering intelligence by talking to other people on the ground in all of these countries.
Right. Defense intelligence. And we are responsible for a lot of stuff. So every military organization around the world, the Defense Intelligence Agency gathers all that and puts it into one.
And so if anyone knows what's going on at the ground level in these various countries, it would be you. And your opinion before Congress is that ISIS is a problem.
Yeah, and it's also not just my opinion. It's expert judgment of years on the ground myself. It wasn't just, you don't get, fairy dust sprinkled on you and poof, you're a general and you're in charge of an agency. I spent years of my life in combat operations around the world, and certainly prior to that job, the previous 10 years I had spent back and forth fighting this enemy, and I really, really deeply understood them. And I also had great people in the organization that when they presented the evidence to me, which I already I knew from my own experiences, and we had to then bring that forward to Congress. I was directed by my bosses at the time, which were the White House and the Director of National Intelligence, to change your judgment, to change your analysis. And I said, I'm not going to do that. And so I presented that in front of Congress, just as I'm telling you right now. And of course, they didn't like that.
And so you were
I was
asked to step down. Now, how long was it between the time you were asked to step down and when you became a part of the Trump administration?
got about, it would have been 2014. So a year and a half.
So a year and a half, you are out here living as a private citizen, doing whatever consulting work you're doing and speaking and things like that. Now you're in the White House. And now all of a sudden, they come up with a question about something you did. Was it 2 years earlier?
Yeah. So it's not just that. It's also about the other things that I was also doing, the background between, because it wasn't what I did in 22 days. It was what happened over a course of years. And one of the other things that I did was I required and requested and received an audit of my agency, of their resources, back to the resource, point that I talked about, right? And the audit was a horrible, discovery of just failure of years and years of just, corruption, fraud, waste, abuse of billions of dollars of taxpayers' money, right? So and they didn't like that. So that set off all kinds of alarm bells around the not just the Defense Department, but around the intelligence community. So those were a couple of the components. Well, now all of a sudden you can fast forward and I'm being considered and then appointed as the National Security Advisor. That position comes with an ungodly lot of authority. It comes with an incredible amount of authority over organizations like the Defense Department, the intelligence community, the State Department, because you're a close personal advisor to the President of the United States.
Yes, exactly. Because all of those organizations, the DIA, they all roll up to those occupying the White House.
Yeah, the National Security Advisor is a cabinet appointed position. It doesn't have to be confirmed by Congress, but it is a cabinet appointed position, and it actually sits at the right hand of in this case, the President of the United States.
And you know where all the skeletons are.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, I know a lot about where there's a lot of waste and abuse. So they know that.
So now we're beginning to understand why, after 33 years of a stellar record that allows you to attain one of the highest positions in the military for our nation, now all of a sudden, within 22 days, you're no longer fit for service.
Right. And actually, something prior to that, so the Crossfire Hurricane, Russiagate, that actually began, we now know from the Durham report, that investigation actually began in late 2015. So I left the military in late 2014. So that investigation actually began in late 2015, and it included not just Trump, because there was still a primary going on. So it included Trump, Rubio,
because they didn't know who was going to win. So they had something in their back pocket.
That's right. And Ted Cruz was brought in. Ted Cruz, Rubio, and Trump. Those were kind of the three, because those were the three that were still looking like one of those could win the primary. Well, and then in the early part of 2016, I'm brought in. They start investigating me because I start to stand up for Trump. So we know this now. And then post the conventions of 2016, my name then starts to pop up as a direct target of this Crossfire Hurricane investigation. And there's all kinds of background on that, which we now know the entire thing about Crossfire Hurricane was based on a Hillary Clinton campaign funded dossier, which is just incredible, when you think about.
And no one head has rolled, but so let's move a little bit, just move the timeline up a little bit more, because I wanted people to hear your story, because, I mean, in a way that I have never actually heard all the pieces laid out, that as we just laid them out here. But I wanted them to hear it because, again, from my awareness, you were the first casualty of the weaponization of our government. And, because now we talk about weaponization, we talk about Donald Trump, we talk about the January 6ers, but you were the beginning of it. And I think that from there, they've only perfected the use of of this particular tool. But and here's the thought, because I believe most people would say our government is being weaponized against us. But I believe the root of the weaponization of the DOJ that really pursued the whole Russiagate, the weaponization of the FBI that is pursuing Donald Trump still today, the weaponization of the IRS, the weaponization of big pharma and big media that force people to take a jab that they did or did not want to take, the weaponization of our school boards that are now calling parents domestic terrorists. I believe the root of all of this weaponization against the people has its genesis in the administrative state. The same administrative state that when you did an audit and started kicking up dust, they didn't like it.
When you get somebody into government, and this is why they went after you, okay? And it is a microcosm of the problems that we have in government. Why they go after good people is because good people are not compromised, right? Good people look at the world and look at things like their families. They look at their communities. They look at their country and they say, I love my family. I love my community. I love my country. And I want to do, what's best. I'm not like, even like I say, they didn't even find an unpaid parking ticket in my life after examining everything about my life for 35 years. If they're only going to find, 80 characters on a tweet about you, that's like, come on.
That's the worst thing they can find about me.
Well, but what they do, and this is sort of, and I mean this, you're a part of this, and I am definitely the target of it. In the past, they would physically assassinate somebody, and I'm talking about, when I say they, our government, okay, elements within our government, would assassinate somebody like a sitting president of the United States by the name of John F. Kennedy, right? They would target other people like Martin Luther King, like Malcolm X, like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. So these people are not assassinated because, or by some other country. Believe me, if they were our country, we would know it. And somebody in our government, if they had any real honesty, would be going after those countries, because there wasn't a country to tie it to. As we now know, particularly in JFK's case, it's directly tied to our own government. So I lay that out because in the past, Kathy, they could physically assassinate somebody and get away with it, right? And they make this big mystique about it, because in the past, we didn't have things like DNA or forensic investigation. So now nobody wants to go back and look at the bodies. I mean, you can't even go back and if somebody really wanted to go and exhume bodies, you can't do that with those people because of state's secrets. Okay. And I'm serious about what I'm saying. So now what do? They assassinate people by narrative. Okay. And that's because they can. So when they assassinate somebody by narrative, they say somebody like, oh, General Flynn, easy, all day long. We'll get the media, the woke corporate media, who's in the tank for us. We'll just make up these lies about him, and they make up 50 lies, and they just beat. I mean, my name was the most Googled name for 2 years in a row. 2 years in a row, most Googled name in the world. Okay, because it was like Flynn's a Russian spy. He sat with Putin at a dinner table. Nobody even listens to the speech that I gave in Russia. If you listen to the speech I gave in Russia, you'd be like, holy crap, I'm surprised the Russians didn't throw in jail.
And just briefly to that point, because I went and looked at the history of the directors of the DIA, and no one would know who any of these people are other than Clapper. I think that is interesting. And my thought was, and the reason why I know you obviously is because they intentionally shine a spotlight on you. And I love what you said, assassinate people by narrative. And so these people from the beginning of the DIA, 1967 to today, you would be hard pressed to name anyone besides you and James Clapper. And I believe that it is by design that because of your role, your importance, the investment that's been made, the secrets that you carry, you are to live a very low profile life. And now all of a sudden you're in the media because you disrupt their narrative.
Yeah, I disrupted their narrative by, as a Democrat, I get involved with the Republican candidates, plural, right? I mean, I was advising,
and not just any Republican, but Donald Trump.
Well,
and
I mean, now you take it forward. That's right. Now you take it forward to Donald Trump, and who was a totally disruptive person. And I'm campaigning with him on a daily basis going into the 2016 election. And, we had, I think we brought 18 million veterans, right? A lot of veterans that voted for Donald Trump. And I feel like I did help him win. And and they hated that, right? Because the heir apparent was going to be Hillary Clinton post Barack Obama.
But in addition to that, you know the secrets. And now you're alongside the disruptor. And in order for them to do to Donald Trump what their plans were to do to him, they needed to get rid of you. Now, that's just my opinion. I know people be like, oh, conspiracy theory. It's not. It's actually just being observant.
If I had, I tell people, Kathy, that if I had stayed in the White House, there would have been no Mueller investigation. So if I had stayed in like another month, there'd have been no Mueller investigation. They knew that they needed something because a lot of people don't know because I was paying very close attention to all after I left. I mean, I'm like, God, my life flipped upside down. And, talk about the attacks that came after me and my family. I mean, they tried to destroy. Remember, I have 9 brothers and sisters. I have like almost 60 nieces and nephews. I have my own children, my own grandchildren. They don't care about any of that. They don't care about your children. They don't care about your relationship.
But let me just also say, this is not just the left we're talking about, because the ones who came and kneecapped me, you mentioned his name. Y'all can go back to the beginning of this to hear it. That was on our side of the aisle. And we had, because of the lies they were telling about me, I had to go hire additional security because we started getting death threats and people wanted to do to my, at that time, 13-year-old daughter what had been done to my mother in the way that I was conceived. So, and no one cared. They just kept doing it. They don't care. I am in the way. And I just wanted to throw that out there, that this is not just something the left does. This is also on our side of the aisle.
That's why I said earlier, the Uniparty. There is a Uniparty establishment, and I'm not part of it. You're not part of it. And a guy like Donald Trump is not part of it. I mean, I know I don't know if you're still helping him, but, like Vivek Ramaswamy, he's an interesting character because, I have my opinions about him, but I do think that there's a role, and he's definitely, he's disruptive, and that's a good thing. I mean, he's a disruptive influence because he's not part of that Uniparty establishment that, look at what we're learning about Nikki Haley. I mean, I've known that about Nikki Haley since she was governor.
Yeah,
right?
I don't think most of us knew that. I mean, especially when you talk about you being anti-war, having us involved in all of these different wars. I mean, I'm going to talk about that as well, but I just want to put a bow on this administrative state, because I earnestly believe, and Vivek talks about it a lot since you mentioned his name. Most of you, if you've been listening to my podcast and watching it, I am the national director of grassroots for the Vivek Ramaswamy presidential campaign. And
that's why he's so effective.
I am just doing my part, General. I'm doing my part.
I'm telling you, these people, I'm sorry, Kathy. I don't mean, and I hate cutting into you because you're so articulate about stuff, but there is an element in guys like him and people like you and women like you And that element is an element of authenticity. And this is what the American people want. They don't want these long in the tooth politicians who keep spewing the same crap over and over and over again. That's why they went after me, because I'm not a politician. I'm all about this country. That's why they went after you, because you're not a politician. You're all about the people, in this case, in your case, of your district and then your state, for the state of Pennsylvania. And frankly, and maybe you've talked about your life story on this, but I didn't know about your life story until you and I met. All I knew about was what I had read in a bio, and then heard some people telling me about this woman. And then when I met you, you tell me your life story, and I'm like, oh my God, this is an even stronger human being than anybody really realizes. So all the people that are coming after you, they're coming after you because they fear you. That's what they do in me. Because when you say Flynn knows where, secrets and all this stuff, yeah, they fear me because they can't control me. They don't have anything on me. Okay. And believe me, the one thing that I do know in Washington, D.C., there are an awful lot, and I would say it's like 95% or better of our political class are compromised by either a foreign country or a company.
Absolutely. Do we even need to talk about Fang Fang and what's his name? Swalwell. What's his name? I don't want to dabble in conspiracy. I just think that's very interesting that Fang Fang is no longer among us. Hey, everyone. Just want to interrupt the podcast for a moment to tell you about a special offer. Mike Lindell has done it again. As usual, he's out there in the world finding solutions to problems we all have. My towels solved a problem that we all had with towels. You go into the store, they look so pretty, they look so soft, they feel soft, they look lotiony, and then you get them home and they don't actually dry your body. Well, that's why Mike Lindell made my towels. They actually work. They're soft and they absorb. And now My Pillow is excited to announce 2 brand new lines of my towels. Now, what makes them the best towels ever is that they're now made with a 100% long staple Sherpa cotton. This is a comb ring spun cotton that makes my towels even softer and more absorbent than ever. And now you get a 6-piece set for an amazing introductory price of $29.98. Now, you know that's not happening. I'm sure you're out there trying to purchase new towels now. You have friends and family coming over for the holidays, and you know that you're not going to get a 6-piece towel set of this quality for $29.98, but you can go to mypillow.com, use promo code Kathy with a K, or call 800-988-3934. That's 800-988-3934 and get your 6-piece introductory set for $29.98. You can get a designer premium line for just $20 more. Either way, you save $50. Everyone actually gets dried off and you look like a champ. So they actually work. Just go to mypillow.com and use promo code Kathy with a K. This offer won't last long, so please go order now. I think, again, and one of the, there's so many things that I really appreciate about Vivek. I've been very long-winded, and Vivek has as well. And talking about Donald Trump, we believe he's the best president either of us have ever lived under as an adult. I just happen to think Donald Trump has done as much as he can do. And now it's time for a new generation to pick that ball up and run with it. And, the people will decide eventually who it will be. I'm going to support either one of these 2 particular people that we're talking about. But I think it was very fascinating that Vivek, from my awareness, you may know different, was the first person I have ever heard speak so clearly and unequivocally about the 4th branch of our government, which is the administrative state. We don't vote them in. We can't vote them out. They claim to have civil service protection where you can't even fire them individually.
So let's talk about let's take a few minutes because I know we're going to come into a hard stop here at the end here. So let's talk a little bit about this because that is something that I do understand quite well. Okay, this administrative state because I ran large numbers of them, and I had my own inspector generals. I had my own legal firms. Basically, DIA's got like a law firm, right? DIA's got a huge inspector general organization. We are a giant organization. So the administrative state, when people say there's nothing that can be done about them, well, the people that can do something or the person that can do something about the administrative state is called the President of the United States. And one example that is just a small example of an action that only the President of the United States can take is when Ronald Reagan took all the air traffic controllers and basically replaced them, right? I mean, so there was a strike and it was going to shut down the airline industry and basically shut down travel. It was a big, big deal. It was during the Reagan administration, and Reagan stepped in as the President of the United States, as only the president can do. And he basically said, okay, you're all done. And what he did was he then went and took resources, and he took government resources. In this case, it was almost a reversal of it all. And he said, we're going to run it. We're going to run the air traffic control system for the country. The President of the United States of America, given the power of the Constitution and the power of the office of the president, only the president, not the vice president, not the Secretary of Defense, not the Secretary of State, only the President of the United States has the authority, if he or she deems necessary, that elements of the administrative state need to go. I don't care what the unions say. Believe me, if the union, I took people and I said, I couldn't eliminate them from my job, but as an agency head, I said, you know what? You're no longer productive and viable, and there are allegations of things that you have done. Now I'm just talking about individual cases, and I could say, I don't want you in the office anymore. You just stay at home while you're under investigation, because I don't want you around people. I definitely don't want you around women. I'm thinking of specific examples. And so you just stay at home. Now, we would still have to pay that person's salary while they're under investigation, but I don't want them near the workforce. I want them out. A president, on the other hand, can say, you know what? For the good of this country, we are going to eliminate, and I mean eliminate, all senior executive service personnel, all SES we call them, right? All SIES, all senior intelligence executive service personnel. Those are people at a very high level in the government, and there's far, far too many. A president of the United States can say overnight he can write it on a napkin what he wants to do with the United States military. Okay, President of the United States can say 4,000 people that have to be appointed in government every time an administration comes in. We're not going to appoint 4,000. We're only going to appoint, instead of having in the Undersecretary of Defense Policy Office, which has like 24 senior political appointees, we're only going to have 2, or we're only going to have 1. I mean, now I'm talking about somebody who really deeply understands the administrative state. That's another reason why they had to get rid of me, because Donald Trump, a guy like Donald Trump as president, he didn't understand any of that.
He
really
didn't. And the story that I've heard is that he wanted to fire people or maybe groups of people, but was told about these civil service protections, and you can't. With someone like Vivek, graduated summa cum laude from Harvard with a molecular biology degree, graduated top of his class at Yale Law School. He actually understands the Constitution. So he's been very, very clear. And I mean, it really is the kind of thinking that I think we need in the next leader, someone who understands what you find among Republicans, for example, that we have very few people have any real vision. What they do is they go back to Ronald Reagan quotes. They open up the chest. They pull a quote out. They spit shine it, and they regurgitate it in front of the people like a war cry, a rally cry. But we're in 21st century times. I think we need people who understand that these set of issues we're dealing with, I don't think we've ever dealt with them as we are.
Here's what I would say to you. Because on this issue, I'm all for people who are good people, honest people, authentic people, and high energy, smart, ready to go. Government is not like business. It's not like business. It doesn't mean that you can't bring in your leadership qualities, your characteristics, your moral sense of who you are, some things that you learn. But government is not like running a business. And that's what Donald Trump learned.
Very true. Very true. I think you have to be able to bring in really good people, seasoned people.
Yeah, you've got to be able to say, a president of the United States has to say to himself or herself, look, I'm going to focus on three priorities for the four years that I'm here. But it doesn't mean that you're not juggling other balls. The people that you tell, like if you choose a Secretary of Defense, you choose a Secretary of Commerce, you tell them, look, you have the full weight of my office. You have the full authority to be able to do the things that you need to do. So if they want to go in there and they want to just, cut the organization in half, or like in my case, I would say, and people always think immediately that if I was put into that job, what would be the first thing you do? People always go, I bet you're going to shut the FBI down. I said, no. First thing I do is I shut down the Department of Education. I would tell every single person in that building, thank you for your service. We're going to cut you a 60-day stipend. Go find a job in middle America somewhere because there's plenty of jobs out here. And again, thank you, because there's a lot of good people. There's a lot of lower level government servants in there that, have children and families. But you give them like we do in the military. You cut them a check and you send them on their way. But you shut that organization down because that's billions and billions of dollars.
General Flynn.
It's completely wasted money. This is only the president of the United States
and that's
can
why
do this.
I think it is so important that we win. I'm going to close it out with this question because, I wanted to talk to you. I mean, I could talk to you forever. I really can. I have so many things. I'm not even getting to, I think we may have identified what our chief internal threat is to this nation. I happen to believe it's the administrative state.
I agree with you on that. That's, people call it the deep state or, whatever. But I agree that we now have at the top of our federal government a vastly overreaching federal state, that's run by tyrannical principles, people who think that they know better.
And I don't even know. I mean, one of my questions was going to be, and maybe you can answer it if you feel so generous with your time, is what is the end goal for these people? Because nothing they touch. I mean, Donald Trump had a much more colorful way of saying everything they touch turns into fecal matter. But it's not like they're actually winning any or having any success. But instead, let me ask another question, because we can talk about inflation. We can talk about open border. We can talk about 100,000 Americans dying every year due to fentanyl that's coming through our border. We can talk about the epidemic in child sex trafficking. We can talk about veterans getting kicked out of shelters to make room for illegals. We could talk about sleepwalking into World War III. We could talk about China eating our lunch every other day. We can talk about, I just bought Thanksgiving dinner literally double. I paid roughly $300 last year. It doubled this year, right? I mean, we can talk about, I hate to be a little graphic, but our children is being exposed to this graphic stuff. Is that we now have 5, 6, 7, 8, 13-year-olds being taught how to give effective blowjobs with coloring books. We can talk about grown men dressing up in prostitute attire coming into our children's school to read story time. So, I can talk all day about the innumerable ways our nation is being systemically destroyed. And yet, I was listening to an interview that the current Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, about a year ago, right before the midterm, and he was predicting a red wave. He was saying we're going to win by a significant number of seats in the House. We're going to win the Senate. And we know that red wave never manifested. And then just a couple of weeks ago, we just had just a beat down by the Democrats, right? So we've had the forced jabs. We've had people being fired. We have schools being closed. I mean, again, I can go on and on listing all the issues. What is it? I mean, the apathy among the people. There are people like you and I who are, just ready. I think I put that number at maybe 30%.
Let me answer the apathy part, and then I'll talk about why are they doing this, right? So the apathy part. So let's just talk about this most recent election, okay? And I'll use the state of Kentucky because I looked at all states that were in play in general, but I looked specifically at Kentucky because I thought that the race up there for governor was a very interesting one. So in the state of Kentucky, the voter turnout all across the state was 38%. Okay, that's apathy. That's complacency.
Democrat and Republican?
Yes, overall 38% Democrat, Republican. But in the cities of Lexington and Louisville, Kentucky, the Democrat turnout was 70%. Okay, 70%. The Republican turnout was around 35 to 38% in both those places. So the Republican, this is why I think Ronna McDaniel needs to be fired, but the GOP chair for Kentucky needs to be fired. But if you have voter turnout that's under 40% in a big election for governor across the board, but in the key places where it really mattered, where a lot of votes got turned out for Democrats, the Democrats turned out 70%. So whatever they're doing to get voter turnout, above the Republicans, it worked in the state of Kentucky. Now, there's a couple of other examples of that, but I'll just leave you with that because 35% or 38% or anything less than like 100% to me is voter apathy and complacency and laziness. So if the American people want if we the people want to change the outcome of what we have in this uniparty that's running our country, particularly and even at the governor's levels, then they got to get out and vote. You can't sit there and go, well, I'm not going to bother.
But again, I used to ask I cringe when I asked the question, what more has to happen to we the people before we wake up to this?
So now let me tell you where we're going. And because you say to yourself, and people go, why do these people, they already got a lot of money, they already got all the power, because they want more money and they want more power. And the direction that the United States of America is heading is we are heading toward something called the United Socialist States of America. Okay? We can become overnight a socialist country with socialist characteristics, socialist tendencies, which basically means communism and Marxism, which is even more harsh. But we are heading towards rapidly becoming a socialist state where the tyranny is at the top, and the dictatorship of control resides at the federal government, and we the people sort of lose we have our rights basically just ripped to shreds, and it's happening. We see it in our ability to take care of our own health care, to take care of our own budgets. I mean, I always tell people, Kathy, and I'll finish with this. When people tell me that I don't get involved in that politics stuff, I don't do politics, I tell them, your life is politics. I said, when was the last time you bought a loaf of bread? It's everything. The price of a loaf of bread has to do with politics. If I go to shop for a loaf of bread, which I do go to shop, I go with my wife down to the grocery store, right? I'm looking at I'm going to buy this bread because it's cheaper, right? Because it's $2.50 instead of $3.50 for a loaf of bread. I mean, this is crazy, but this is politics. And when you complain, maybe people will finally realize that if they complain enough, maybe the complaint will take them to the voter booth and they'll vote. Because if we only have presidential races in 2020, okay, the presidential election of 2020 between Biden and Trump, the voter turnout was approximately 68%. That means that almost 30 to 35% of people who could vote, who were registered to vote, failed to do so. So when I start to engage with somebody in an argument or a debate about the problems that we're having, the first thing I ask them is, well, where are you from? Well, I'm from Colorado, or I'm from Nebraska, or I'm from Florida. Well, when was the last election that you voted in? And they go, well, I don't bother. And I'm like, I'm done.
It is astounding. I was talking to Dennis Prager not too long ago on another podcast, and he said, he's a historian as well. And he said, history is not in our favor as a nation. He said, however, history is not the same as strategy. He said, I am here to tell you history is not in our favor of of our country being pulled off the precipice. But he said the strategy, nevertheless, is to have courage, to stand up and speak truth. That is our greatest weapon.
So one thing, because now you're getting into the world of spiritual warfare, okay? And I'll leave your audience with this, because I believe this is where America is at spiritually. And the reason why I believe this is because I lived it. I lived it in my own, in my family's persecution for no earthly reason. And here I am, right? So where we are, and I talk about this in other things that I do, America today is living in Psalm 23. Okay. So for your audience, you go read Psalm 23, and it essentially talks about, the valley of the shadow of death, and don't fear the evil that is presented in that dark valley, because, if you really do believe this phrase that's in that Psalm, thou art with me. Okay. And so if we don't return to some biblical principles that this country was founded upon, and we understand that, then, and that this faith, this strong faith is with us all the time. We just have to do more than just pretend, right? And then we can exit that valley. Because I'm going to tell you, I am a product of prayer. Prayer is the most powerful weapon. I exited that valley because I had faith that good was going to win over evil. I had absolute faith. And my wife and I, we are, we're strong in that. And I exited that valley. But when I got out of that valley, because I should be, off doing something else, right? I'm retired, right? I spent all the stuff we talked about in the military. But I left that, when I exited that valley, it's something like just hit me like a brick in the head and said, what did you just learn? Because I could be, like I said, I've said this very publicly, I could be Donald Trump's worst nightmare, because he fired me, right? I mean, shoot, why do I stand up for Trump? Because it's not about Trump. It's about the question that you just asked. It's about this country. And it's about your children who I've met, who are wonderful, and your husband who I've met who is wonderful. It is about their future, and those children someday will have children. So you and I can fight for at least 2 generations in the time that we are on this earth right now. That's the valley that I want you in that valley with me, because that's the faith that we have to have in each other, because we understand that there's a presence that's in our lives that has allowed us to survive. You're a survivor and you're a fighter. And you, that began before you were born, right? And you know that. And so it's so powerful. It's such a powerful sentiment, because we are in a evil versus good time. And it's a spiritual war. Don't count that out. I mean, there are such dark forces. So that's where America's at. It's in Psalm 23.
I love it.
Go read it. To your audience.
I love it. General Flynn, as you're talking, I'm thinking, I earnestly believe America does not exist apart from the U.S. Constitution. You rip up the Constitution, you rip up America. But the Constitution does not exist apart from those Judeo-Christian values that informed the thinking of our leaders, our founding fathers, of what is right versus what is wrong. And I know there are a lot of Americans who want to throw off any shroud of religion or God. But I'm so grateful. Almost every single show I have, it closes out with the other person on the air with me talking about something that is bigger than we, the individual, than me, the individual. And I believe in that. I'm a Christian. I believe Jesus is real. And I cannot imagine going through the world in which we're living through right now without exactly what you just said, quoted in Psalm 23, that he is with me. I am not alone. He is sovereign. But we are not called to sit on our couches either. Look around, get engaged. General Flynn, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for your friendship.